Hey, bro, how you doing?
On yourself there, Carmine.
Pretty good.
Thank you for your time. So many things I want to ask you, but,
Okay.
but we're going to lead off with the King Kobra live release. Not
Okay.
your first live release from Sweden Rock. Did you know when you were doing the gig, hey, this is going to be a live release?
No, we when we actually recorded that, when you play Sweden rock, and we're a little closer for the light here. When you play Sweden rock, you actually they record everybody, and then they give you the option to buy it, basically.
Yeah,
So that's what we did. And actually, on that same weekend, I played with Vanilla Fudge. They
which
give
was
you the option to
also
record it digitally, video, or whatever. So Vanilla Fudge recorded it video and audio, and King Kobra just did the audio. So
it's a great sounding live album. Did you have to do
yeah,
much editing to it?
not editing, remixing. We did a lot of remixing. I mean, the performance itself is exactly how it is, but the sounds were mixed by my buddy Stevie D. Curtis. Stevie D. Curtis is his real name, but we call him Stevie D. And he's mixed a bunch of stuff for me. And he's a great mixer, a great engineer, and he's a great guitar player too. He played with us a couple of times with Drum Wars, and he's actually on one of the Drum Wars songs. Which one was? Oh, Mother Space. He's playing some guitar. Bumblefoot's in the middle, and he's on the sides.
Sure.
Yeah, but he's a great thing. But he did a great job editing them. And when I first heard him, I said, "Wow, this sounds great." I was very pleased with it.
Your album has Jordan Ziff on it, and you had him before he joined Rat. I
Yep.
believe he was playing with Marty Friedman at the time. How did Jordan come onto your radar? Great player.
I think he came on through Dave, our guitar player, Dave Michael Phillips. Knew him, and when I heard him play, I said, "Oh, this guy's awesome. And he looked good. He's a nice kid, And he was playing with Marty, but he wasn't getting much visibility, But I think after playing on this King Cobra thing, and I said, "Wow, this guy's really good."
Yeah, it's a cool set list where you get the King Kobra favorites, the staple songs you'd expect to hear, but then you also get a cool song by Dio era Black Sabbath,
Yeah,
Deep Purple, Wasp. So I take it
yeah.
that you don't mind playing other people's songs if it makes sense.
Well, you gotta see the history in it. Okay.
Hmm.
The reason why we did the Dio song, the Heaven and Hell, because Paul Shortino used to be managed by Ronnie and Wendy with
Hmm.
Rough Cut. Very close situation there. The song we had called Monsters and Heroes was written by me, Paul, and Dave for King Cobra for the first album we did on Frontiers. But we didn't give it to Frontiers. We gave it to Wendy for Ronnie's fundraiser, for his cancer fund.
Yeah.
When we got it back, then we put my brother on it and we put it on our album. Okay, so now there's that history. So everybody got the little solos, and the reason why we did Wasp is because Johnny Rod played with Wasp.
Sure.
So he said, "Why don't I do a Wasp song a little bit in my bass solos?" We said, "Fine," and then we always did these double guitar lead solos. Instead of one guy doing a solo one at a time, we did them both together. And they decided they wanted to do a little bit of Deep Purple things. So we said, "Fine," So
Yeah.
that's how it all ended up like that. And and I think the cool part is when Paul does an a cappella version of Heaven and Hell, singing it with the audience,
Hmm.
and then as a tribute to Ronnie, and then going right into Monsters and Heroes, which is the song is all about Ronnie. So it was a great little tribute to Ronnie, and from me and Paul.
Based on the stories you just told me, based on your discography and how Guitar Zeus, that's really a who's who of anyone who can play hard rock. You're kind of basically the Kevin Bacon of rock at this point, where you've worked with everybody. How many people have worked with Pink Floyd who were not in Pink Floyd per se?
Yeah. Well, one guy just called me a music entrepreneur. I said, "Oh,
Fair.
that's interesting. That's a nice new title."
Not many people have been a successful sideman and band member and band leader, to say
Right.
the least.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
And so that said, because I'm very aware that your drum instruction books, they still sell all these decades later. I have a feeling there's one right next to you right
Right
there.
there, I'm editing it. I'm going to be doing some audio for it. We're re-releasing it on Modern Drummer, along a 12 product of all the drum books and all the DVDs and the DVDs, the audio, the everything, different languages, all kinds of stuff. So I'm working in my studio here. I'm going to be doing audio as soon as I get my computer back that blew up because I got hit by a power surge and I lost a Focusrite, I lost a screen and my computer. Luckily, my brother Vinny is my computer guy. He built the computers as he does that as a side hobby.
Wow.
And I did a lot of work on that computer, a lot of stuff, And I got a new instrumental album coming out too. It's called Appice and Perdomo Project. And Perdomo is a guitar player named Fernando Perdomo, who's in this Netflix documentary called Echo in the Canyons.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he's the guitar player that plays on stage with everybody. And he's played with Clapton, he's played with all these guys. And we did this instrumental album that I just sent one of the tracks to Susie Quattro to listen to.
Oh, yeah.
Because she wants me to play on her solo album. We just had her on a Hanging and Banging show. And she said, we've been emailing. She said, would you be interested in playing on a couple of tracks? Send me something you've been doing. So I sent her this one track. It's instrumental. She goes, oh my God, this is awesome. He sounds like Jeff Beck on there, Fernando. He said, is that who I think it is? I said, nope, it isn't. But it's a really young, talented guy. I mean, young for me, he's 42 years old, I said, a young, talented guy. He's amazing. He plays bass, guitar, keyboard. And we wrote these 12 songs. We actually did 2 covers. We did one cover, which is Maybe I'm Amazed, right? By
McCartney, yeah.
McCartney with big background vocals, like big gospel background vocals. And then we did a heavy or sort of a heavy rock, jazz, reggae version of Do You Think I'm Sexy instrumental, which is really pretty cool. So those 2 are on there, and the first single drops. It's called Rocket to the Sun with a video next week, actually. And I'm just thinking we should be doing press on that, so I'm doing it now.
Well, we will include that in the cover.
That's on Cleopatra Records too.
Well, recapping what I was just saying there, all the success as a band leader and or member and or sideman, the drum publishing. I know you've also had success with flipping houses. I was at a drum clinic of yours 2.5 years ago that you did randomly on Seaford, Long Island with Vinny.
Right.
So what I'm getting is, where does this entrepreneurial drive come from, as opposed to most talented drummers I know would wait around for the phone to ring?
I don't know. I guess because I grew up in Brooklyn and I always had to go out and look for jobs. Ever since I got out of high school, I had 2 jobs in 4 weeks, regular jobs. And then at the end of them, finally said to my parents, I got fired from one. The next one was boring. I'd work all week and try to take the train to the city from Brooklyn. End of the week, I get $45. At the time, it was $1.25 minimum wage,
Yeah.
And I said, look, I could work on a weekend and make $150 cash. What should I do? And my father said, well, I guess you work on a weekend. I said, good. That was 1964. I never had a day job again. But I kept pushing. I kept looking for opportunities and making opportunities. You have to make your opportunities. You can't just sit around waiting for the phone to ring.
Right. Well, you said 1964. Within 5 years of that, I believe you were living here in this town, Long Beach, Long Island. Do I have that time?
I did live there. You live in Long Beach? Yeah, I did live there.
I was curious. You lived in the Azores. I believe you told me that the last time.
For a minute. Yeah.
Did you have a lot of after parties after the Action House at that place? Like, for example, would we be surprised to find out the members of Led Zeppelin were in Long Beach?
Well, I didn't. I had Jeff Beck come over I had a house in Oceanside, which I turned into a drum studio. And I had another house in Cold Spring Harbor.
Wow.
I had 2 acres of land. It was beautiful. And I had Jeff Berlin, I had Ray Gomez, Jeff Beck, all these rock stars come over to my studio house, and but when we lived in Long Beach, we didn't get a lot of people coming over the house there because they were just apartments. It was more when we had houses that people visited.
Got it. Have you been to Long Beach in recent years, or is that just the past?
I haven't been there in years.
Got it. It has definitely changed where it got nice and then not nice and nice and not nice, probably 5 times in the years.
So
And
what is it now?
Now it's very, very nice.
My friend that works for Modern Drummer, he's in charge of the publishing. He has a house in Lido Beach.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful house on the water. So it must cost a lot of money. He's just renovated it all. He hasn't been there in years. He lives in Pennsylvania.
Joan Jett still lives around here on the block. So that's how you know it's still nice.
Okay.
The last Long Beach question I had for you is, Rick Rubin, did you ever run into him in any capacity in your years of Long Island?
No, I ran into him in LA.
Got it. Because as I was going,
a few times when he was producing something,
Got it. What was it that made you permanently move west? Because it seems like most successful musicians from Long Island, Brooklyn, Queens eventually got fed up and went west.
Well, in 1975, when BBA was done, Phil Basile was my manager, the Action House, Concerts West, Concerts East. And I had a group called Astroport. It had me, Jeff Berlin, Ray Gomez, and the keyboard player from Blood Rock. And we were doing like Chick Corea kind of songs with vocals. Unique. It was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was working also with Jeff Beck and in London, working on Blow by Blow. I ended up not being on it. And, he was supposed to get me a deal for this Astroport, and they never got a deal. And then Steve Weiss, our attorney who represented Vanilla Fudge, Rascals, Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, Jeff Beck, Yardbirds, everybody. He called me up and said, look, I got something going on in California with a group called KGB with Mike Bloomfield, Barry Goldberg, who's a hit songwriter, and Ray Kennedy, who was a singer that I knew from the BBA days. He had a song on the BBA album. He was in a group called Group Therapy out of Long Island years before that.
Yeah.
So I knew him from that. And I said, wow, I'd be interested. He says, what about a bass player? You know any bass players? While I was in England working on Blow by Blow, I was working with Ray Gomez, with Rick Gretsch from Blind Faith. So I said, what about Rick Gretsch? So, well, is he cleaned up? I said, yeah, he's cleaned up. So I took Rick and me. We went to California. My older brother, Frank, lived in LA at the time, in Whittier. And we stayed at his house. And we went in and met the management. It was Elliot Roberts of Lookout Management.
Oh, yeah.
Former partner of Geffen Roberts.
Yeah.
And I just saw that documentary on Netflix about Geffen. Geffen went to my high school.
Geffen was from Brooklyn?
Yeah, New Utrecht High School. We're both in the cabinet, famous people with Buddy Hackett, me, David Geffen, and a couple other odds and ends that
Did David Krebs go to your high school as well?
I don't know. That I don't know. But David Geffen, they showed a thing on thing. What high school did you go? I think he wrote out in Utrecht. I remember I knew that. I knew David Geffen after, when I went with KGB. He was the first one to give us the offer that started the record company battles for the band. So anyway, so I went out there to do that. They put me up in a thing called me and Rick in Oakwood Garden Apartments. Which was like,
the Oakwoods, yeah. Yeah,
the Oakwood. It was like the place where all the musicians used to go that come in town. They was there for more than a week or so. They had a furnished apartment, had jacuzzis and pools, and and you go to the Rainbow at night and pick up chicks and bring them back to the Oakwood. It's a great lifestyle. I was there for like 6 months. It didn't even rain ever. It was beautiful every day. And finally I sold my my houses in Long Island because there was nothing happening. And I was in this band KGB with Elliot Roberts managing me, you know, and it was great. And then I got screwed up with Mike Bloomfield. Really didn't like playing in that band because he's like a real blues guy.
Mhm.
And there's me and Rick Gretsch, hard rock guys, and Ray Kennedy, a hard rock guy. And he didn't like it. So when the album comes out, it got #1 airplay in Billboard all over the place. And he does an interview with the LA Times and says that no way in hell would he ever be playing with me or Rick or Ray because, we're not blues guys, and that this was put together by big management. And what the fuck is this guy crazy? So Elliot threw him out of the band. So we never toured with him or nothing. And then Rick started doing heroin again so we went out on the road with Joe Cocker, and on that tour we had this guy Greg Sutton playing bass, and my friend Benny Schiltz playing guitar. And we did a road tour with that on the first album. And that was when Joe Cocker was all messed up. And he'd be singing, he'd go off to the guitar solo, he'd go to the side of the stage and throw up in a bucket because he was all fucked up from heroin too.
Jeez.
So it was kind of a lull in my career right there, from 74, 75. And then beginning of 76, we started doing a second album from MCA. And at that time, I was asked to join Rainbow. Right? I couldn't do it because I was signed to MCA Records.
Mm-hmm.
In those days, once you sign a record deal with somebody, you're with that record deal.
Exclusive,
you can't just jump ship and go somewhere else. You get sued. So I couldn't do it. And then Rainbow came out and they started getting big, and that Ronnie was in Rainbow. And I said, oh man, what a drag. We started doing the second King Kobra KGB record, and it was just nothing happening. It was a nice record and everything. And then Sandy Gennaro met him on the street in LA. He was out there also. I said, how you doing? Good. And I always had the Pantera and the Jaguar, from the BBA days and, my other successes. And I had a nice house I bought out there in Los Feliz, beautiful Spanish house, 1924 house. I bought it for 90 grand. And by the time I sold it was like 500 grand. It's crazy real estate out there. So I said, what are you doing? He goes, I just had an audition with Rod Stewart. I didn't get it. You should call the guy. I said, who's the guy? He said, Pete Buckland. I said, Pete Buckland? I know Pete Buckland from the Cactus days. We toured 30, 40 shows with the Faces, and Pete was the tour manager. We used to wreck hotels together and, abuse women together. Anyway, so I called Pete, and Pete said, well, Rod's in England. Let me see what he says. So Rod called back, and Pete called me back and said, Rod said, go to his house and check out the band. I said, oh, okay. So I go to his house, and who's on bass? Phil Chen. Phil was on the Blow by Blow record that I did with Jeff Beck, that I never finished doing, and this guy Jim Cregan, who I did a gig when I was in England, working on the Jeff Beck project, and I was with Ray Gomez and everybody else. I did this thing with John Lord and Ian Pace, who was a double drummer, and we did this thing at the Palladium, and I met him. So when I went up to the house, I said, oh, I'm going to Rod's house. I pulled one of my good cars. I pulled up in my Pantera. I pulled up to this house. I couldn't believe how amazing this house was. A huge Beverly Hills mansion, Lamborghinis and Porsches and Mercedes in the driveway. I said, wow, I want to play with this guy. And then I went in, I saw the band, we had a play. I met Billy Peake, Gary Granger, John Jarvis. We had a good play. And then, Rod was coming home a couple of days later. They invited me back. And then Rod said, well, you got the gig if you want it. I said, let's go. And that was it. So then my career just went skyrocketed from there,
Yeah, there's so many people.
For a long time.
There's so many people that the fact that they played with Rod Stewart would be the one credit they coast the rest of their career on. And in your case, that's like credit one of like 20. So credit to you.
I kept it going.
Do you have time for 2 or 3 more quick questions, or are you in a rush?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, the first thing is
I got
related.
2:30, 10:30, 2:30. I got it.
Okay, we'll have you done before then. So first thing is a lot of the photos of you in the Rod era that I've seen that I love, you're wearing a t-shirt that says Sex Police on it.
Yes.
Did you ever think of marketing those shirts or selling those shirts yourself?
No. Good idea though.
Well, I want one if you wind up doing that.
I might add that. I might do that actually.
You
Well,
should.
you know what it was, the Sex Police. Did you read my book?
Yes.
Okay, so you know what it is.
Yes.
It was great. It was a great thing. We really made fun out of it, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Next thing, Ronnie James Dio has come up a few times in this interview, and one of my favorite projects ever is Hearing Aid. There's a
Yes.
photo on my wall of the Hearing Aid thing, which you're in.
Oh, with everybody in it.
With everybody in it.
Yeah.
Was that a fun project to make? Because when I ask people about it, I hear two schools of thought. I hear one, everyone was so whacked out that it was crazy. And then the other thing is, no, everyone was having a good time and laughing for 2 days.
Well, everybody had a good time. I was only in for a day or so. I was on the road with King Kobra. I specifically flew in to be in that. That's why in the video, I'm the only one doing the Cobra sign. So that was when Ronnie came out with this.
Yes.
You know, that was just beginning. You know, it wasn't really the thing yet. So I said, well, Ronnie's got this. This is our Cobra. You know, so we used to do that. We did that in all our stuff. I just remembered that actually. But
Yeah.
I had a good time. I had a good time. I mean, my brother was playing with Ronnie. Then he played on the track, and there was all my friends there. Yeah, some people were whacked out, you know, but everybody was having a good time. You know, that was the good thing about it. And at the time, Hearing Aid was the answer, rock's answer to the thing Michael Jackson did.
Yeah.
You know,
We Are the World. Yeah.
We Are the World. It was our answer to that, and it was good timing for it. You know.
The last thing that I'm curious about here is I've already mentioned Pink Floyd. You mentioned being offered the Rainbow gig, Rod Stewart. You gave Zeppelin their first US tour, et cetera. You met everybody as far as I know, but is there one living person that you're still dying to collaborate or work with?
I'd like to meet Ringo.
You've never met Ringo?
I never met Ringo.
Wow,
Isn't that
I'm
funny?
surprised. I would have thought between Mark Hudson or David Fisher.
I met everybody else. I met John Lennon. You know, that John Lennon story, my mother in lasagna with my brother, there's that story. I met George Harrison, came into a Cactus session. You know, I met Paul McCartney with Rod. I met John with Rod. I never met Ringo.
And does David Fishoff know this?
I don't know if he knows it, but I told Greg Bissonette 2 weeks ago, we did the Rockin' Pod convention.
Yeah.
I said to Greg, Greg, look, I'd like to meet Ringo sometime, you know, when you're playing a gig or I can get backstage. And I forgot what year it was. They called me to do that gig that Greg's doing. And I said, okay, Fishoff was the guy doing it. And I worked out, we had the contract, everything. And I was looking forward to it. And then that was the year that John Lennon, they did a new album with John Lennon's voice.
Yeah.
And they didn't do the Ringo tour that year. And then when they came back, they got Sheila E. to do it. You know, so I said, oh man, you know.
Well, good to know there's still goals for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to meet, I mean, if I don't meet him, I met Charlie Watts a couple of times. I wasn't really friends with him.
Mhm.
Like, you know, I wasn't friends with John Lennon. My brother was friends with John Lennon.
I never
Really
heard
good
that.
friends. Yeah, oh yeah. When he got discovered at Jimmy Iovine was in there doing Double Fantasy,
Mhm.
and the record plant was managing my brother's horn band that had Mark Rivera in it,
Yeah.
right? And they used to drive into the city every day, pull up to Jimmy Iovine's house and wait for him, and his mother go, Jimmy, Vinny's here, you know. They come down like Brooklyn. Who would think that he'd end up being, you know, a billionaire now, you know? Anyway, and Jimmy Iovine, he was the first job he had engineering was my Astroport project back in the day, 1975. Anyway, so they were up rehearsing at the record plant. Jimmy comes up and goes, hey, I have an artist needs hand clapping. They go down and they put the headphones on, looking in the studio. It's John Lennon. So they did the hand claps on Whatever Gets You Through the Night.
Yeah.
And then they became friends. And then John Lennon would go up there and they'd be playing pool, smoking joints. And then John Lennon did this gig for some political guy in England. He was
Bobby
two-faced.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, and the band had two faces. That was my brother's band. That was Vinny playing with him. They got to be really close with him, you know. That's how the lasagna story happened, you know.
You have no shortage of stories, but
Oh, it's unbelievable.
thank you.
That's why I'm starting to do rock history speaking gigs, you know, that can go just entertain people, talk an hour on what happened in my life, you know.
It's easier than doing interviews like this. But
yeah, easy. Okay,
but
man.
I can't thank you enough for your time and the many years of great music. Have a great
Thank
rest
you,
of the
bro.
day, man.
Keep it up. Keep
Take
listening. Okay, bye-bye.
Paltrow.